All right, everyone, let's talk movies. In particular, specifically, The Patriot.
This is a movie we all love. I'm pretty sure none of us will.
Well, here's the thing. As you might have noticed, we review good movies on this channel. We review good movies.
We'll get to some bad ones later.
Yeah, we have yet to review a bad movie.
But if you don't like this movie and you want us to give a bad viewing, then just unsubscribe from the channel, okay? We don't accept.
I know that's hard to do because we have so many subscribers, you know?
That's true.
I mean,
but, anyways, this is a movie that we...
we first gotta get... today we have another guest on, our third guest. His name is Oliver. I don't know your middle name, Lee. Tell us about yourself.
There's nothing really to tell. I'm pretty lame, honestly. I dabble a little in amateur filmmaking, so that's something.
Yeah.
So he's gonna bring us a filmmaker's perspective.
Yeah, we're gonna get his quote on
this movie. As I like to give the historical perspectives. I like to be the armchair historian, and we're gonna have our amateur filmmaker.
Yeah, I'm just curious though, what is your middle name?
Oh, I'm not gonna say it because I've had too many people actually use that against me.
Speaking of intriguing, let's start talking about The Patriot.
That was a terrible segue. That started like a good segue, and then it just fell off at the end.
Yeah.
Kind of like The Patriot, except Alright, so...
The Patriot doesn't fall off. It just stays good.
Let's say that for the...
consistently goes up.
Yeah,
Alright, let's start with the plot summary.
Alright, you want to do that? Okay, you should.
Yeah, so I usually give the layout. So, layout of this movie. This movie is set...
Oh, wait, I thought I usually do that.
No, you do the
I do specs.
You do specs.
In the plot, yeah.
In the plot. Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
Alright, so this movie was released in the great year of 2000. It was directed by Roland Emmerich, he's a German director. He had just come off of, fun fact, Independence Day. So he did a big sci-fi movie themed around 4th of July, and then he did an actual historical movie about the American Revolution. It was written by a guy named Robert Rodat. He also wrote a movie called Saving Private Ryan, so he had just come off of that, and then he wrote this movie. So a couple good back-to-back movies for him. It stars, of course, Mel Gibson. Who else could star in the Revolutionary War epic but Mr. Gibson? All right, so this movie, as Nate was about to say, begins in 1776, and we're just going to kind of give you the setup to the movie, what it's all about. It's about this dude named Benjamin Martin, and he is a peaceful farmer in South Carolina who has a brave but very dark and brutal past serving in the military. However, now he just wants to raise his 7 children. He's a widower. His wife died. We do not know specifically how, but he is a widower with 7 children living on this massive farm. And he decides not to join up with the Continental Army or vote a levy for the Continental Army when the British come into South Carolina in 1776. However, when his son Gabriel gets kind of captured by the British, because Gabriel is serving in the Continental Army, that spices things up, and eventually Mr. Martin has to abandon his pacifist principles and join the Revolutionary War. And he ends up, of course, bringing together this group of Carolina patriots and forms the Carolina Militia, which proves very pivotal to the U.S. war effort. So, that's kind of the setup of the movie, and we'll get into a lot of spoilers as we continue on. But, let's go ahead and get into positives, negatives, thoughts.
This is usually where we spend most of the time of the review.
Yeah, you want to go first, Nate?
Positives and negatives.
Yeah, I feel like we're definitely going to spend a lot of time on the positives for this movie.
Yeah,
definitely.
We all love it, and we're also Americans, and it's really a movie, which Mel Gibson's very good at, seeing as he was basically in the exact same movie except for Scotland.
The first third of this movie is very similar to Braveheart.
It's very similar to Braveheart in a lot of aspects, but in my
opinion,
opinion,
Mel Gibson isn't doing an overtly Scottish accent.
He's an American.
Yeah, thankfully. His hair's better, you know.
Noah, what's your biggest positive on this movie?
My biggest positive on this movie is the movie understands that you have to sacrifice in order to make the movie good. It understands that there has to be a loss in order, and like to me it's like there's the good is only going to be as good as the bad was bad. You know, some movies where that get, you know, there are hard times and then they go up a little bit, you're like, yay. But in a movie like this, when it goes so far down and you just it devastates you again and again, it keeps coming. Like the end, and I guess I'll go ahead and spoil, you know, it's spoiling, but you know, the end when, you know, the Mel Gibson's character finally kills his arch nemesis, the army finally beats the British, all this happens. It's so much better than it would have been without all these times that you were like, why does this movie have to have all this happen? But once you go through it, you've really gone on this experience with Mel Gibson, and it makes you understand and like relish the victory so much more. That's one of the reasons.
But I totally thought that he was about to die.
I was wondering. I've never watched it. So me and Nate and Noah had seen this movie. He had never seen it. So I would be interested to know, like, were you expecting the church to be burned? Like, were you seeing that as soon as you saw the redcoats?
So
like,
what I loved about this movie was what Noah was talking about. Like, it's just like the church. Like, if that was in a different movie, everyone would have gotten out of the church. Yeah. Everyone, like, at the end, oh my word. He was about to hit him with the sword, and I was like, this is just going to end on, like, a crazy moral, because the whole movie has just been, like, lost, and it's just been, like, it was crazy, though.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, but, like, when watching the sword scene, I thought for sure he was going to die, and I think subconsciously the movie had trained my brain to not look anymore. You know, I mean, like, his first son dies, or one of his sons dies.
Yeah.
His other son dies, or his son's wife dies, and then he dies. And his wife died before the movie began.
Yeah.
His wife died. And then, two plantations were burnt down.
His plantation's burned. His sister-in-law's plantation is
burned
burned.
down with all these
innocent
people in it.
Yeah.
The Reverend died. Let's not forget the legend Reverend who also died.
Yes, the Reverend died.
The man.
The Reverend.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the whole movie right there.
His friend committed suicide after his family.
Yeah.
So, like, literally, you're just like, I give up. Everybody's gonna die. You know?
feel like the guy that shot himself was like, no, that's not working. Just stop it.
So what is your biggest positive, Oliver?
Ooh, biggest positive. What I thought was really cool, when I watched the trailer, and this is really cool in my opinion. When I watched the trailer, there was a lot of slow motion stuff that looked really bad. Like, it looked like really bad. The trailer was really awesome when you showed it to me, John.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It portrayed the story so accurately. The trailer was really good. But one thing that I saw, it wasn't like filmed well. Like, it didn't look like I would want to continue watching the movie. And then when I started the movie, it was awesome. The cinematography was beautiful. The nighttime scene when they were fighting in his yard, it was so beautiful. And what I love about that is because you can hide the details in that. So, like, directors know how to put scenes like that in it, not only to make it look beautiful and just super well done, you can also hide the fact that, like, I saw a lot of the scenes the soldiers were closing their eyes, like, when shooting online. I was like, they're probably not going to do that, but if you put them in the dark and you don't really show their faces, you can't.
You said before you were looking forward to that scene. You had heard about that. The scene I'm referring to is towards the beginning of the movie when the colonials and the British are fighting literally in Benjamin Martin's front yard.
And it was, like, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a panning shot, and they're just, like, retreating.
And it's like showing the emotion that he was like, our children will see the sports game happen in y'all's yards. Yeah. And it was like, that's my yard. That's actually happening.
The Patriot's definitely one of those movies that, like, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's like an old movie with, like, bad that doesn't look exciting. And then if you watch it for 5 minutes, you're like, oh,
what's happening next?
Oh, like, it's so exciting. Like, 3 hours goes by.
So my biggest positive on this movie, which I have several that I'll elaborate on, but my biggest positive of this movie is honestly the pacing of this movie is phenomenal. There is never a moment in this movie where I got bored. I'm going to be honest. Like it once it grabs you and it never lets go. And obviously it does. Part of that is that it has all these just tragedies occurring throughout the movie. But I mean, there's now once his son gets killed, it just you're invested, and like even before that, with all the cool like exposition about like what's going on in the colonies, that's all cool too. But once his son gets killed, you know, it's just like, okay, we're in, or we got to go do something about this. And from that moment on, it just never lets up. You know, he forms the militia. They start ambushing the British and starting to have some military successes against the British. And you just have this awesome cat and mouse game going, and then you have the whole aspect of his family back at home, and he's worrying about them, and obviously eventually he has to go save them from the British once again, and then obviously it all culminates in a massive battle that, you know, is just epic in all proportions. And we can talk about the action a little bit later, but the pacing of this movie, it moves at such a nice pace and doesn't like ever lull into like a long boring sequence. It just keeps up. It keeps you interested.
Definitely.
So what about you, Nick?
You're all gonna hate me for this, but historical accuracy.
Wait, no, we're talking about positives, bro. We're talking
That
about
is a
positives.
positive.
Oh, positive. Sorry. Oh, positive.
What, is that a negative?
Oh, I thought you were going negative. Some people would say that's a negative.
What?
I thought you were saying historical inaccuracy.
Oh no,
Like historical
accuracy.
accuracy. Yeah.
So not only are the dates and details right about this, and obviously you guys know that I'm the Crusades nerd, so I don't know quite as much about the Revolutionary War, but I've done my share of reading, and not only are the dates right, but the flavor of the time is right.
Yeah.
And
You're talking about like the dress and the costumes.
yes, and also just political concepts that were going around at the time. Like, it was really cool how they would nod to entire political movements that were going through the colonies with single lines of dialogue from the characters. And it was so cool. It's like, because they acknowledged that and they acknowledged that. And, of course, they couldn't fit in everything, and that's fine. But they got, you know, obviously this is not a movie about the Revolutionary War per se. This is a movie about Benjamin
one
Martin
man,
and his
yeah.
family. But they portrayed the Revolutionary War very truly, especially during the times of defeat that they faced, you know, in the North. And then also, you know, this is a movie about the Revolutionary War in the South, which is not usually portrayed.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
But
why.
the majority of the pitched battles that happened in the Revolutionary War, not only did they almost all of them happen in the South, almost all of them happened in South Carolina. So this was a war that was basically fought in South Carolina, which is pretty funny.
That's just like, it's so not. You totally think Revolutionary War, you're like, oh, Massachusetts, like all happened in Boston or something.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you just don't think South Carolina.
Yeah.
You know?
What I love though, like you're saying though, is like even though it's about this one man and his family, it throughout the movie, especially at the beginning, you do get like an actual real sense of like what's going on.
Yeah.
Apart from his
They
family.
made a nod to things like tar and feathering,
Yeah.
and they made a nod to things like the division of the colonies and them not feeling unified as a nation, instead feeling like different nations.
And also throwing people into bags so they don't get a little bit too touchy.
Yeah, and a lot of
That's
good.
not really Revolutionary War, but
yeah.
That is a real thing.
It just
though.
had a lot of
That
good
was
like period detail.
they nodded to the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. They nodded to the occupation of Boston. You know, just great. A lot of
And Charleston.
Yeah,
Charlestown, as they say.
Yeah, Charlestown, which is, and then, you know...
That's an
Is that what
accuracy
they
there.
call- is that what they call it?
That's such, yeah, that's a real good historical accuracy
I
there.
actually don't know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what it was known as until I think I don't know until when they
I
said
mean,
it
I
was
know it's
Charleston.
very close to Charleston.
Yeah.
It is Charles. That's what modern
Yeah.
Charleston.
That's
And they nodded to things, you know, like slavery.
Yeah.
The movie was very nuanced. Obviously, they had to kind of take the American side because this is a movie about the Americans.
It's an American.
I want to see him. Okay, I know we're talking about like America, the Revolutionary War on our side, but I want to see a movie on the Brit side. That would be pretty cool.
no.
It would be pretty cool.
It would be at least interesting to see like a
It'd be
movie that's
interesting.
maybe about both, like more like about. I mean, we do get a lot of scenes with the British, but they're definitely the antagonists.
They're definitely the bad.
Mainly this one guy named Tappington who just you hate the whole movie, and we'll talk about him in a minute.
Honestly, it's a great film.
Oh yeah, I was about
Great
to.
villain.
Sorry, that's a good segue, and you can piggyback on what I say. But this movie has one of the best like movie villains, like underrated movie villains. Jason, so he's William Tavington. He's like Colonel William Tavington. And he's like the leader of this like cavalry regiment called the Green Dragoons, and he's played by Jason Isaacs. And he is like such a hateable villain. Like you just hate this. I mean, all right. So let's just go through the atrocities that this guy commits. He burns everybody's house that he comes across. He kills kids. He kills anybody that like resists him, even women and children.
He basically just does any wrong
He
thing.
burns
Yeah,
churches
exactly.
with people in them. Okay, he's just like hateable, and
And,
that's.
like-
But that's what. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, it sounds like he would be a great villain because it's
Yeah.
so one-sided.
Yeah.
It's not nuanced. But, like...
He's a psychopath. That's what
yeah,
makes
yeah,
it believable.
yeah. The pure hateability of him is,
Yeah.
like, the theme for him.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because the whole time you want Mel Gibson to, like, kill
Kill
him.
him, like,
And it won't happen.
Yeah,
Like, he keeps
exactly.
surviving.
Yeah, there's this great scene though in the middle where they actually come face to face.
Yeah.
But they're under a flag of truce, and they can't really
Yeah.
fight each other, and they just have this great little one-on-one where Benjamin's like, I'm gonna kill you before this war is over. Anyway, but yeah, the villain is just so great and compelling, and honestly, it's a great performance by Jason Isaacs because to make a villain that hateable, you have to have a good actor.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
doesn't-
definitely.
yeah, I mean, the screenwriter can write the dialogue and they can set up all the situations, but you have to have that just
'Cause then you
that like
just
villain's
cringe the whole
actor
time.
to.
Every time
And it's
you
also
yeah.
great for them to make a villain that's so hateable without. It's kind of like in Christopher Nolan, which is one of his movies, The Dark Knight, which is funny because that's Heath Ledger. He kind of turns the villain stereotype on its head. Normally
Yeah.
villains have this reason, and the Joker just has no
No
reason
reason.
for anything. It's kind of like this
See,
guy.
yeah.
He doesn't. It's
Well,
like, oh, what
except
are his
Heath
motives?
Ledger
Well, no,
is
well, no,
the
his it hints a little bit at his motives. You know,
Oh,
he
I mean,
says
he has
that
motives.
he's lost all of his esteem because of his
I'm not
father.
saying he's totally like
and-
the Joker.
yeah.
I'm saying like it
Yeah.
turns the
Yeah,
villain
for sure,
stereotype.
yeah.
You're not used to this type
Yeah.
of villain.
He doesn't need like
If-
a whole
and
page.
he's still
Yeah.
this doesn't justify his actions obviously at all, but I mean his supposed motive is he's for like obtaining all these victories basically at any expense is he wants to like gain he wants to be able to gain all this land in the colonies when the war is over.
But like he doesn't.
Because he
feel-
doesn't have any respect
He
back
doesn't
in
feel
England.
any sympathy for anything he
Yeah,
does.
no.
He's,
He's a
totally
sociopath
human.
and a psychopath.
So it makes him so much more hateable.
Yeah.
He's a really good
They written him
villain.
so
And
perfectly.
it contrasts Mel Gibson
Yeah.
character so well.
Yeah, I know.
It's
So
one of the
any
best
He's the
another-
personification of that school bully that you could never punch back.
Yeah.
Dude, but does he not look like the devil in certain scenes? Like his eyes and he's like, dude, I don't have a word, bro, but
Even his hair is.
he looks like
Yeah.
Tommy Wiseau from The Room.
He does.
when he has his
like
hair
that.
down.
He does.
But dude, do you have any other pauses? We have plenty of time.
Well, I have other positives,
Yeah.
but they're more on the action.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Whatever.
okay.
Oh yeah. This
So
is just thoughts
one
on the
thing
movie.
that I thought was amazing, I saw at least a couple cannonballs bounce.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But that's just a kind of like a conception of that it just explodes.
It's a bomb.
Yeah.
It's not
It
just
doesn't
a
like
bomb.
It's a
skip.
big piece of iron. Why would it explode?
Why would it explode? Like they literally shot them for the purpose of it's going to
Yeah.
hit the first time and it's going to keep going.
And
And
eventually
they had to
it'll-
come at the camera at once. I was like,
Oh, that was
that's
a
awesome.
cool shot.
It was
So
really
it's like
cool.
so basically just it's the shot in the first. There's a battle kind of towards the beginning
Yep.
of the Colonials versus the British. The Colonials get routed, and there's this one guy who gets his head taken off by a cannonball, but it like comes right
Yeah.
at the camera. And it's
It
really
was.
epic.
They did really well.
Yeah, the cinematography, just to go off of that, is amazing in this movie. It was nominated for the Best Cinematography Award that year. It should have won, in my opinion, because it's just like it's beautiful to watch. You have all these cool landscape shots. You have cool slow-mo shots during
They
the
were in
battles.
swamp, they
I
were in
love,
all
yeah,
terrain.
I know, right?
And they did it so perfectly.
Yeah.
There wasn't one terrain.
Like
where it was
one
like,
thing I think you always think when you like watch a war movie or whatever, you can be like, oh, it's gonna be all fields and battles. It's not gonna be cool. Like the sets in the movie keep you interested.
Yeah, yeah.
There's beaches, plantations,
Swamps.
Yeah.
fields,
Like the British people all in their mansions
yeah.
and stuff.
And like going back to what John said, it
Yeah.
just floats. Like
Yeah.
with the plot, every terrain,
Yeah, I know,
every
yeah.
place, it's just
Yeah,
goes
it's a
perfectly
3-hour
together.
movie. It just doesn't feel like it just moves at such a nice pace.
just-
We were
it
sort of
doesn't
talking about
stop.
that, yeah.
But like
This
to
movie-
me, those movies can get so bogged down in like a field or like a camp
Yeah,
or something.
definitely.
And this movie's like constantly cool,
Yeah.
cool sets.
Yeah, I
everything.
know, yeah.
I really appreciate it.
But also, I mean, just to go on another positive is just the tension is just so good. It just builds that tension up.
Tension.
You hate this guy out right after he kills the kids, but then he just keeps on doing this, doing these heinous acts, and it just obviously builds up to that ultimate moment where they just duel.
Characters,
Yeah, I mean, God, this movie punches you in the gut like
many times.
five. Let's see, Thomas's death, the burning of the house, the burning burning of the other plantation, the killing of Gabriel, the death of all those guys he burns that he burns the houses along the river, the guy who commits suicide.
And his
I
wife.
mean, it hits you from the very beginning. It's like you feel.
Gabriel's wife.
Oh, Gabriel's, it burns
Like,
the
to
people
me,
get
that's
burned in the
like
church.
They like have this
Just got
blooming new
married.
relationship. And then she
But that's good
dies.
filmmaking because it doesn't let you go. Like you could get bored and it could have just become the cat and mouse game. But no, Tabington continues to do stuff to like keep your attention. But any other positives other than the historical accuracy?
Well, to finish the one about the historical accuracy, I was going to also say that they nodded to the French and Indian War,
Yeah.
which is so cool because much like in the Civil War, when most of the Southerners learned how to fighting for the Union, in a similar war, which I cannot remember the name of right now.
Was it before the French Union?
No, I'm talking about the Civil War.
Oh, the Civil War. Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
And they fought
Something Mexican War?
The Mexican War.
Mhm,
Yeah, the Mexican War. That was the one. Yeah.
The Mexican-American War. So yeah, and they all learned how to fight, fighting for the Union in the Mexican-American War.
That's very similar to this.
And in the same way, I believe I wrote a paper on this. In the same way, the American revolutionaries learned to fighting for the British in the French and Indian War, which, by the way, is when the French teamed up with the Indians in order to fight the British land claims for the continental United States. So, very cool there. Benjamin Martin fought in the...
Yeah, like when he shows his uniform, it's a British uniform.
Yeah.
That's what he would have fought it. Like he
That's
wasn't going to be
crazy.
fighting in like... Yeah, but
And
just...
I do have a historical nitpicks, but I'm going to save that.
Yeah, save that for the history.
I'll save that
part,
for the history section.
Right,
By positive, I'm gonna say the nuance isn't the right word. They don't paint with broad strokes in this movie, in the sense that the British aren't just evil and the Americans are just like good shining white knights.
You have like some good British.
Yes, in
Cornwallis, who was a real person.
Yeah.
Portrayed pretty as an honorable person.
Yeah, he was talking about the gentleman's way of fighting. And
and he was, and the evil dude is just one guy who's bucking the system, and Cornwallis is trying to keep him in line the whole time.
Which I feel like, honestly, in real life, I bet that happened.
Yes.
Like, I bet that totally happened.
That
happened.
100%
The
happened.
thing is, it happens with even armies like the Crusades, which, like, obviously I think everybody here can say, like, we're in favor of the Crusades. However, there was armies that got out of hand and did stuff they shouldn't have done, and that happens with all armies. So, like, it's not like you can be like,
But
the British.
But what I like is that we were talking about this earlier, not on the podcast, but it shows the British committing atrocities, but it does show the Americans like killing surrendering British. So it shows atrocities on both sides.
And Benjamin Martin did the thing at Fort
Yeah,
Wilderness.
honestly, I'm going to segue that into talking about the acting by Mel Gibson. Because Mel Gibson, I mean, God, he was so great as William Wallace, but this role, watching this movie, he might have been better in this movie. He does such a good job of portraying just a war veteran and a guy who doesn't, he just has this dark past. And you can even,
when he goes into his furies, it's such pure rage that
It's like justifiable.
What I love is,
but when he's his father,
he has this whole
he's
different
got
guy.
a soft side to him.
He just does a great job. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, you just buy him as this like haunted war veteran because obviously from the very beginning, the very first shot is him with his tomahawk putting it in his chest, and it starts out very dark before it starts going into the plantation.
I would say that his father's side of him is even meek.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah.
And then it's like contrasted by this like savage rampage, like 1776 John Wick, like.
Well, I think it's a really cool.
That's valley scene where he's moved from tree to tree. That is so cool.
Let's just talk real quick though about that ambush scene because that's the iconic scene. A lot of people think is in this movie. I mean, but honestly, people talk about how it's like, oh, he and his boys couldn't have taken out those guys. But think about this. But think about this. He would have trained his guys to like shoot. I mean, it implies that too. Like these are guys who live in like the they would hunt. They would all. And honestly, the way they ambush them, he lines up the guns on the ridges and then like systematically takes them out. It's not that. It's like 20 redcoats is how many they say he kills.
They don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
They can't just run out of position.
Yeah, so it's not that completely unrealistic. I mean, it's in a movie, but I mean that doesn't mean it just couldn't happen. I mean, this guy's portrayed to be an absolute savage.
Hey guys, I just thought of something.
Yeah.
Did they actually burn all those houses?
Oh, dang.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
That looked real.
Yeah, I bet they did.
That was
real.
way. That fire was way too good looking for 2000.
Do y'all know the
This-
budget
this
of
is
this
a challenge.
movie?
This is a challenge.
It was like
For you in the
150
comments.
million.
Somebody looked up if they actually burned those houses and get back to us on it. All right?
Definitely.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
that's
Leave a
the get.
comment.
I know
We
y'all-
have
I
so-
know y'all are involved in the comments already, but like,
Yeah, but like,
Definitely.
I'm sorry, but there's so many comments I probably won't be able to
hey,
find
that
it
can
in
spark the fire. In the comments.
But I love the job. But
Wow.
to go a little bit more on the character of Benjamin Martin and Mel Gibson's performance, I think it's such a cool dynamic of how you have, this guy who he put away his kind of his war face for the sake of his family to raise them and stuff. But then in this movie, he has to put that back on to protect them again.
Like John Wick.
Yeah, I know.
Definitely. Like
That's
John-
actually a lot like John Wick.
Yeah.
I haven't seen John Wick, but
John and I were
That could be
talking.
our next movie review. They're a
Definitely.
historical movie. Well, unless we have any more positives.
well, I have a couple more.
The movie is
Small
so
ones.
good. This movie deserves the title of masterpiece.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, but
It
let's
does.
just talk a little about the score, though. I mean, because come on.
All right,
We
actually,
cannot-
let's talk about the score. It sounded like it was out of Batman and Robin at some point. I'm not gonna lie. Like the last battle scene, it's like ba-da-bum,
Yeah.
ba-da-bum. I was like, wait, what's happening? What am I
Oh, come
watching?
on, the score is great.
I mean,
man.
it's good, but like he hit somebody and then be like, pow! And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, ultimately the theme, just the theme song that plays kind of at the beginning, that da 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 da. I mean, it's just
I thought it was.
it embodies the American Revolution. That's what a good score should do. It should embody the plot of the movie
Definitely.
and like the themes of the movie. And John Williams accomplished that with this score.
My probably second favorite was the character development.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh, yeah, elaborate on it.
Like he changed so much
Yeah.
from the beginning to the end.
They even say that. in the
They
movie.
say,
They're
I was
like,
about to say, he's like,
"You've
"You
changed."
Yeah.
But it's like that's a good scene too.
It's so good.
I mean, yeah, but the character development, especially in Benjamin, but also I like how you have the character of the you have the racist character who goes from having no respect for the black guy that fights in the militia, the slave.
Yeah.
By the end,
And by the end of the movie, he's like, "I'm honored to be fighting with
which
you."
also like another small positive. Like there is some really funny humor in this movie. Like there's some
Yeah.
jokes that like are really.
There was a
funny.
joke that killed me.
Oh, so,
Yeah,
tell us.
yeah, well, yeah.
It's like the contrast because it's like so heavy and then like these little jokes like
Yeah,
it's like
it's-
you gotta laugh. So.
But the
Perfect.
humor, it's like perfectly timed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Dude, that one joke like literally killed
All right,
me.
so the joke that he's referring to is the one in the scene where they're putting Gabriel in the bundling bag.
Which
And
is
then-
a real thing.
Yeah, I
by
know,
the
yeah,
way.
that was
And
historically
that
accurate.
blew my mind.
Yeah, that was historically
Crazy.
accurate. But anyway, the joke was the mom was like, so the father was here, who's like deaf, is listening with his like horn at the
And the
door.
mother had just
And the
thrown
mom's
Gabriel
like,
into the
yeah, and the mom is like, they hear them like laughing and stuff, and the mom's like, "Don't worry, I said better than my mother did."
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah.
I feel like you could get through threads.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like you'd have to have like iron thread
Yeah.
or something and be like
Yeah.
welding him in there.
But I mean, we talk about Mel Gibson's performance and also Jason Isaacs' performance, but you gotta talk about Heath Ledger's performance. I mean, it's really just a shame that he died,
I
first of all, because
know,
think about all the
so
great
sad.
movies he could have
I was
done.
actually thinking
He
about
was
that.
only 28 years old.
I was thinking about this the other day. Think he could have been in Inception. He could have been.
Oh my
he could have
word.
been in Tenet. And he could have been in Oppenheimer coming out recently.
Yeah.
Because after think about the development.
That's so
that
sad.
He could have started the
But-
relationship. He could have formed with Christian.
Alright,
Bale.
yeah, I know,
In
but
this movie, he basically like acts like the same character as the one from A Knight's Tale.
Facts,
Yeah.
yeah,
He's
he
like-
does.
I love the father-son dynamic.
Yes,
And
Mel Gibson, they were perfectly cast as father
And
and
like,
son.
honestly, just kudos to Heath Ledger for being able to play a character like Gabriel and then turn around and play the Joker.
8 years later, yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
talk
It was-
about
yeah.
having. Like,
But see, people just like, so we think of him as the Joker, and it's great that he got all the acclaim that he did, but I think it does kind of, people forget about roles like this that he
Definitely.
had.
true. It
That's very
overshadows.
true.
Like, this came out 8 years before. This was really his first big Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
And, because I think he had done a movie called 10 Things I Hate About You.
That was
Yeah,
pretty-
I guess that was rather
and then A
big.
Knight's Tale.
Yeah, well, no, that was after this. That was 01.
That's
This came out in, yeah.
So he had a good career other than The Dark Knight, which obviously.
Yeah,
is his
I mean,
best
in this
movie.
movie, he just does a great job of portraying this kind of naive,
Yeah.
young guy who's very patriotic. And we can talk about whether it's him or Mel Gibson is actually the patriot. Because, I mean, there's kind of some debate about that. But he's just this very patriotic yet naive young guy who's just wanting to fight, who's fighting for freedom and he's fighting for his beliefs.
That's
But,
that's another thing. During the church scene when he comes in recruiting between the men.
Yeah.
That was just a really moving scene.
Oh, that's a great
that
scene.
Was such
One
a
of my
great
favorite
scene.
scenes.
So good.
And that's the scene where the music hits, man.
That's a
As
good
they're
one.
rising.
But then Nate was like, what would that scene be like without the music?
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah,
like,
the music was so
yeah,
good. We were all like, man, if this music wasn't
Dude,
here,
this
it
is
would
what
be
this is
like,
what that scene would sound like. It'd be like.
But also you have the performances of like the children and stuff, you know. I mean, obviously, most of all, we have to know about that heartbreaking scene where Susan speaks for the first time to her father and is like crying for him not to leave again.
They cast the kids so well. Not only are the kids, not yeah, I was literally about to say it. Not only did they get kids that can act so well, they found kids that have the same eyes as Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And so you look at their eyes and you're like, that's his eyes.
Yeah.
Is that his child?
Yeah. Wait.
Is it?
I mean, that's the only way they can act so good. They have to
No, it's
That's true. That's
comments.
true.
Look in the
They're,
comments.
no. Honestly, they're not actually.
John's like, bah, bah. John playing the AA gun over here.
No, but I mean, I will say the fun fact though. Speaking of his kids, he had just had
My
another
kids.
kid right before this movie came
Why'd
out.
you point at
And
me?
Right before they started filming this movie,
Make
they
a
were
little of that.
in the original script. It was
Emphasis
in the original script. It was scripted that there was 6 kids, but then he had another kid, so they're like, okay, we'll throw another kid in there.
No, wait, actually,
Really?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's just
But I don't know. I think her name is Sky McCool Bartuzik. I think she actually died. I read that somewhere. But she does such a great job as the youngest daughter, who's like doesn't speak because of traumatic, because of kind of like PTSD after her mother died when she was probably like 1 year old or something. And she finally speaks in this scene, and she's just like, don't. The way she says Papa, like it's really cute.
And
Like,
then she
it's
starts
sad.
crying.
Well, the best.
No, but it's like realistic. You feel it. And then my final positive on this movie would be just the cool side characters. You have the racist guy that becomes, you know,
Racist guy.
that doesn't become. I don't know his name. I think his name's Dan Scott. Isn't that what
How
they
do
call
you
him?
know?
How did you
Anyway,
realize?
that's what she calls him. She calls him Dan Scott.
Dan Scott.
Yeah.
That sounds like a racist guy.
That sounds like somebody's part of the clan.
That sounds like a racist guy.
But you have him. You have Occam, the slave. Then you obviously have all the cool militia guys that are such rednecks,
And, like-
but they're like just killing the
Like
British
I was
left
saying
and
with the
right.
character development, the small characters like that, they have
Like-
character development
yeah, I know,
too.
like, there's
like
this-
how he was racist, and then
Yeah.
at the end he was like,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
an honor to fight beside
Yeah.
you.
We talked, and there's also obviously the character who ends up committing suicide. He's just this kind of menace little character.
Yeah.
He's like,
kinda
every recruit deserves
Well, the
to
thing
die.
is, he's kind of lighthearted. He's
Yeah.
kinda
Yeah,
like,
he's
you know,
kinda there, yeah.
And then, like, he loses
Good humor
everything.
character. He
And
adds
it's
some
just-
humor to
it's
it.
too much for him. So
But he adds some good humor.
we dwelled on positives.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
I think we should go ahead and move on to negatives because this movie is not perfect, and
I only have one.
I have one critique.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and start. We can go this way. First critique is, of course, we're Americans. We love this movie, but like as far as nuance, there's not much in the movie. The good characters are good. The bad characters are bad.
I disagree, actually.
Well, I'm not saying they don't have their reasons, but like the Americans are the good guys, and they really don't have any reason. Like they have flaws, they have personal flaws, but there's no like they're defending their homeland. And,
Right.
and obviously that was
But they
the
commit
way-
atrocities.
Yeah, but like it's almost warranted because the British were committing atrocities to them. And really, there's only one scene where they kill prisoners, and right afterwards, they're like, "All right, we're not."
Yeah, but you also have that great scene where he describes like literally chopping people up and like.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but so point is like the bad guy, like the main bad guy is very bad. He has no good like qualities to him. The good guys, like,
But other
like
than-
Gabriel, like think of a flaw for Gabriel, like you know. So
He's naive.
So
That's true. He's a little bit too enthusiastic.
I'm talking about morally. Like the
He's-
good guys
oh.
are in the right, the bad guys are in the wrong.
wrong.
There's not
Well,
like,
no, I don't think Benjamin is a very flawed character.
Now-
I think.
I'm not saying there's not flaws. I'm saying like morally, the good guys. There's no strife there.
Just
or,
like
or
what
nuance,
his sister-in-law said, you had every right to do it.
Yes.
Like he did. Like in
Yeah.
the movie, he